As I said years ago, the whites have Detroit surrounded like an army waiting for the order to invade, which the Supreme Court has now given. And they've made no bones about the fact that their entire agenda is to completely eliminate any black representation. Neutralizing the black politicians' legal powers was only the first step. The real goal has always been to ensure that black people cannot vote. When I posted this video years ago, I had a lot of white people who said that this was all a lie, just extremist rhetoric. I would sure like to hear from them good white folks now. As black people, we have been politically ignorant and economically foolish. The result? Our enemies, all of them, are giving us death by 1,000 cuts. Dismantling the Voting Rights Act was just step one. Black people have utterly failed to learn a basic truth about democracy. The only politician you can trust is the one you paid for. If all you bring to the table are votes, that simply isn't enough. This world runs on money, and we don't have any. This must change. The time for black people to play is over. In fact, it was over 150 years ago, and we failed to accept it. Black people can no longer afford to think it's cute to be the dumbest person in the room. Stop thinking that our leaders are supposed to shuck and jive for us. Stop wanting leaders who we think keep it real, because they do keep it real dumb. We need to learn what our interests are and then defend them to the death. Hair weave, sporting events, and the new LeBrons are not our interests. We must start thinking and acting for ourselves again. Black people can no longer indulge the immature fantasy that ghetto life is just another way to live. It is the first step toward genocide. Corral the undesirables into poor, dirty hovels and then eliminate them at your leisure. It is game over for acting in ways the white media has told you to. It's also time for black people to get serious. Being an intelligent black man cannot merely be a matter of color. It must also be a club, an exclusive club. And a club has two defining features. It has a select membership, and it has rules. The price of admission is that you demonstrate that you own things. The membership dues are that you conduct your business with other black people. But we cannot make being black into a club until first we see value in being black. And right now, being black is a club that nobody wants to belong to, not even blacks themselves. This must change. You must see being black as a valuable prize to be fought for in order to preserve it. I'm not talking about merely fighting for a color. I'm talking about fighting for a way of life. Speaking of which, there must also be a code of conduct that goes along with it. The self-destructive ghetto behavior the media has promoted amongst us must be completely rooted out and rejected. We are men, and as such we think for ourselves. The media took criminal culture, uneducated culture, and told us that this was our culture. We didn't do that. They did. But what we did do was to accept the lie that they told us. We took an identity handed to us by our enemies and rejected our African selves. Now we are so weak and confused, we can't defend ourselves against what is clearly the beginning of a genocide. The world had largely forgotten what white supremacy was, but we're getting a hard reminder now, aren't we? White supremacy in the past annihilated entire races of people, and now it is here for us. The white man has more power than he ever had before, and not surprisingly he is using that power to snuff out lives on an unimaginable scale. He is devastating the planet's very ability to sustain human life. White power no longer means black destruction. It now means global extinction. And having seen the wealth that he stole and the opulent lifestyle he created for himself, the whole world now wants to follow in the white man's self-destructive footsteps. This is what we're up against. The African, the father of humanity, represents the world's last best hope. He is the only one who still has enough sense to resist the white man's pernicious, corrupting influence. The question now is, does he also have the willpower to do so? To turn the tide, the black man will have to find within himself once again the strength to reunite all the disparate sons of Africa under one banner with one agenda. Whether it be the halls of government, business, or academics, we must need to see black people in charge of these institutions and to see them led by an African value system. This is why knowledge of self is so important. A man without an identity only has the ability to be one thing, a servant of others. A man who knows who he is isn't willing to serve anyone, or even be a partner for that matter. For the man who knows who he is, the only thing that will satisfy him is to be the one in charge. Black must once again become synonymous with ruler. It was our identity once. It must be again. But this future won't bring itself into being. We must make it real. To rule the world again, we must decide that we are going to be rulers and not servants. We must have not just a thirst for power, but an unquenchable hunger for it. We must be all-consuming in our desire for power. And we will know when we begin to take control of the resources and the means of production. Swag is not a commodity. It is not valuable. As black people, we have created things the world wants, but nothing the world needs. We control nothing, and as a result, we have nothing. This must change. We require big ideas and the pragmatism to make them real. We must start tackling the very real problems we face, because the only way to put an end to the threat white supremacy poses to the world is to put an end to white power itself. And a weak, willfully subservient, confused people cannot do that. But no one man can acquire power on his own either, and no one man alone can hold it. This will require a nation of men working together. Black authority told you power is exclusive.
I'm a firm believer in aggregating power. I'm also a firm believer that power is not inclusive, power is exclusive. So I'm not scared of small numbers, so long as the small numbers are powerful and brought enough resources to inflict their will. And once we start putting something into place, other people are going to gravitate to that. But they can't gravitate to what you don't have.
When we keep inviting whites, Asians, Hispanics, and everyone else into our ventures, we are sabotaging ourselves. We must not merely want to have an all-black club, we must also realize that we have to keep others out. Because non-blacks are not going to put our interests before their own, and the black man being in charge is not in their interests. The question is it in yours? We must show respect for ourselves and for each other. Black people who still engage in ghetto talk, ghetto behavior, ghetto mannerisms, ghetto mentality are garbage to be cast off. We must have a zero-tolerance policy for those who still wish to act like children. We will regain power when we relearn to unite with one another. Look in the mirror and relearn how to love what you see. Look at your black brethren in sorority and love what you see. Embrace knowledge, because that was the black man's first and most important gift to the world. Black first isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's the only good thing this sorry world has left. The black man has the power to change the world. He's done so countless times in the past. But first, he must change himself. Black people have to supply to one another what we need. Black businessmen to employ us and give us economic strength. Black carpenters and masons to build black homes and buildings. Black teachers to educate our children properly. Black policemen to secure our neighborhoods. Black artists to maintain our culture and not perpetuate mental perversions handed to us by white people. Everything in this current society has been perverted into a tool of white supremacy. Even the things you think are for black people are actually white tools in disguise. We need a true African culture that can act as a shield against this. Even in our weakened and ignorant state, we've still managed to have a huge impact on the world. Imagine how much more power we would have if we stopped being white people's puppets. Right now, we are content to be Employee of the Month instead of Chairman of the Board. We must come to see this for what it is. Laziness. It's easier to put in an 8-hour day instead of an 80-hour week, but But this is self-deception. Yes, being the boss is more work, but it's also a lot more power. We've practiced how to settle for less, and now we're losing everything. As black people, we've made it a habit to poor-mouth each other. The most vicious boycott in the world is not the one the Asians have against us, it's the one we have against ourselves. We refuse to do business with one another, and we've convinced ourselves that this self-hating, self-defeating behavior is somehow cute. To us, we think if we spend money with each other, that that's money wasted. Let me tell you something. Spending money with your people is never a waste of money. Buying hair weave from Koreans who happily mistreat us is money wasted. And if you're buying from white people, you might as well get a gun and shoot the first black person you meet. Our economic philosophy must be black first. Commitment to black people begins with you. How committed are you to your people? Do you make it a point to buy from your people whenever possible, even if you have to keep going out of your way to do so? Or do you take the easy way out and blame black merchants for not being convenient enough, not cheap enough, or their goods not being of high enough quality? Do you seek out black businesses to spend money with? Or do you only buy from black businesses when you have no other choice? As human beings, we are creatures of habit, and we've made it a habit to avoid dealing with one another. This has bred mistrust and contempt. We are strangers to one another. This must change. I'm telling you right now, you better make up your minds how you're going to go about being a people. You have to live your lives as black people because you can't be anything else. How you treat other black people, how you regard them, is a direct reflection of how you regard yourself.